Hi, I just want to show off my 1985 Buick Riviera here. Um, I inherited it just a few months ago, actually, due to a death in the family, and they had this. It's actually my grandmother had this stored in her garage for almost 30 years. Bought it brand new back in '85, and I decided to take on the project of fixing it up with the help, a lot of help actually, from my dad and one of my brothers. And so it's quite the masterpiece of a car, and it's really been fun working on it. There's some people will say the '85 was one of the last of the great era of the cars. That's not to say that newer cars aren't great, because they do have a lot of great, but it's one of the great last classics with the chrome, just a full size American car with the 5-liter V8. In '86 they downsized the car a lot, turned everything into the plastic just because of emissions laws and all of that. I'm trying to work on gas mileage, but it's just a beautiful car. I feel like when you look at the front here, you can really kind of tell that it's an '80s car. I've got the hood ornament somewhere. I just gotta put it on. And but when I go back to the rear and you look at you can see the body line here. This really reminds me of a lot of the earlier Rivieras, like the '60s. It has that same type of curve that kind of distinguished the Rivieras, and I think that's the rear of the vehicle is a lot more beautiful in that sense. It's just a really beautiful looking car. These Rivieras were pretty much the same from '79 to '85, and one of the things I particularly like about this one is it doesn't have the vinyl top there, which I personally really like, because I didn't like the vinyl tops. I thought they didn't look good. They fell apart easy, and I kind of like the car having more of the '70s look than the '80s look. And a lot of people do mistake this as a late '70s Riviera. They're really surprised to find out it's a '85. You might notice that there's a trim missing here. I have the trim missing off the rear and the front. That's part of my restoration, is gonna buy a new trim, sand it, and paint it. The problem is, that a car sits for 30 years, all that trim just breaks away, that plastic. So that's why it doesn't really have any trim there. So that's something to do as it warms up a little bit, because it's still winter, but as it warms up, that's one of my projects, is to get the trim for the car. But you can see the car was garaged for a long time, so paint job's in pretty great condition. It's got a few little areas that got some little bit of damage to it, but for the most part it's in really great condition on the paint job. Still shines new, and it's really just great. So yeah, now I think I want to show you kind of inside here, and then we'll look at the rest of the car. So you can see the interior is still in pretty good condition. It's a little bit of wear there, and I've had to do a little bit of cleaning on the passenger side seat, but for the most part it's in really good condition on the interior. There's definitely a little bit of wear from use in its earlier years. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned, this thing only has you can see the odometer here, it only has 58,000 miles on it. I got it at 57,000, and it's so it's got really low mileage, which I'll show you the engine here in a bit. The car is just in fantastic condition. So you can see these things were quite roomy. The flat floors. I got an ice scraper down there. I got the flat flooring, the old school, steering wheel, thin steering wheel. I really liked these steering wheels. Oh, if you hear that sound and you see that there, this car levels itself out, which is what it was doing right there. I sat in it, so it's leveling itself out. One of the strange luxury features they added on. You can see the rear here is quite roomy, with the fancy Riviera fake wood paneling on it. So it's really quite a luxurious car. One thing I don't like about these Rivieras is they were really underpowered compared to some of the other Rivieras out there, like especially the earlier models, especially from the '60s, like the original '63 and the '66. I think they had around 375 horsepower, where even though this has a 5-liter V8. It's 307 on a heavy car, so it only gets 140 horsepower. I think it gets about 255 pounds of torque, which isn't terrible. It definitely can move, but you know, it's definitely not the it's not a really, I would call it more of a luxury sedan with enough power, more so than I would call it the sporty or muscle luxury sedan that it gets categorized at in a lot of websites. So I'm gonna use the interior there. And so let me pop the hood now. I'd show you in the trunk. There's lots of trunk space, but I'd show you in the trunk. But I got all sorts of car parts and everything in there, so we'll just trust me. There's a spare tire and room there. So I'll show you under the hood. So one of the things that surprised me when I first got this was that there wasn't really much rust or corrosion. You can see it's a little dirty, and I've cleaned it off in some spots. Like back here, I couldn't even see this label when I first got it because it was just covered in just, you know, dirt and grime. But the engine's just in phenomenal condition. So most of this is original. I'll tell you what's new. You can probably tell as well. The battery's new, alternator's new, and all the belts are new as well. I actually still need to put my air pump belt, you know, for emissions. I still need to put that belt on. I actually have that in the trunk of the car right now. But everything else is original. I've also got some ignition wires and spark plugs I'm going to put on here again as it warms up a little bit. To give you an idea, it's about 36 degrees right now, and it feels great. It's sunny, but we'd rather wait till it warms up before we do any more work on it here. It's running really great. So you can see that for a 33-year-old engine, it's looking pretty great. Like the only really rust I see is if you can see in there the water pump there, and down at the bottom block, it looks like the exhaust there. That really seems to be the only rust that I see on the engine. It's not really any corrosion, which is really great. Part of that's because it's always been in the western states. It's spent most of its life in California, and then it's been here in Colorado, so it's doesn't really have much to corrode. There's not really much weather to corrode it. They don't put the salt on the roads or anything like that. There's no leaks, no oils leaking, no power steering brake fluid, no leaks out of the coolant, which is pretty phenomenal. Made me pretty happy. The only thing that I could say is leaking is the windshield wiper fluid does leak a tiny bit sometimes, and I think that's because they had windshield wiper fluid that was not made for the winter in it before, so I think when it got shipped over to Colorado, it probably messed with it there. So anyway, I'll just have to replace that part. And I expected the carburetor to have quite a bit of wear on it, but it's actually doing really well. And so I haven't had to really replace much at all, just some, few essentials, the belts, and the alternator and the battery. Didn't even have to replace these hoses. These are original. None of these dried out, anything. So again, no leaks. Now I want to start her up here. It's telling me to put my seatbelt on. You can see it's running smooth. One thing I have noticed is, especially when I start it from being cold, there's old carburetors, there's once in a while I have to give a pump to the gas to get it started, but sometimes I notice too that the idling sometimes it idles a little high after it's been started for a bit, but I found that if I just give a tiny little push on the gas, that it'll go back down to where it should be idling. Obviously, you just have to listen to it because this car doesn't have any information on the any of your RPMs or anything. Oh, and I should mention my fuel gauge doesn't work, so I usually I know that I can get up to about 240 or so miles on a tank, but I fill it up about every 150 miles because I don't ever want to starve the thing. But so here, see everything runs smooth here. about a place that I can drive smooth. It's just been really fun restoring this thing and get it back into shape. From when we first pulled it out of the shed and first got it running, you know, it was running so rough, and you know, we had to change all the fluids. It was so difficult to change the gas that we actually just ended up putting octane booster in the gas, and it wasn't much gas in the car, so thankfully we were able to get some new fresh gas in the car right away. But man, it was running pretty rough at first. It took us a good 15 minutes of it running to get it to stop misfiring, but now it's just really running smooth, and it's such a fun car. It just attracts a lot of attention, and it drives really smooth. It has great suspension on it. It's just a really good car to cruise around in, and like I said, it brings a lot of attention. I have people, especially older guys, asking me about the car all the time, and some of them who used to own these, and they're talking about it, and so it's a fun conversation starter. Really enjoy it. So I'm gonna do what they tell you not to do, holding my phone here, and just go for a short little drive. I'm on some back neighborhood roads, so there's no really traffic in this area here. So you can tell this is actually what's gonna be a new subdivision, so that's why I chose this spot, because I knew that I wouldn't have to deal with any traffic, because I don't want to be unwise and stupid. But here, I'll just U-turn here and take her around. Get up and go here. You can see it runs great. Shifts just fine. It's really a great vehicle, great condition. I'm really grateful to have it. And yeah, I gotta say, it's been really special. So yeah, I just want to show off my car there. Hope there's some of you out there who love these older Rivieras, and man, I'd love to hear about yours if you have one. Man, especially if you have one from the 60s or like a 72, man, I just love those things. So anyways, there's my Riviera.